Business Alchemy is about transforming business. And I'm going to talk to you about 7 principles underlying Business Alchemy, underlying all the work that I do. The first principle is the principle of simplicity. The longer that I've been doing this work and the older I get, the more absolutely convinced I am that everything connected with a business is unbelievably simple. In fact, everything connected to life, to human beings, is incredibly simple. The way the universe works, it's incredibly simple. Businesses are run by human beings. And as we know, human beings complicate everything. Human beings like to think of things as complicated. One of the consequences of all complication, it might also be one of the motives, but I do know one of the consequences of all complication is it keeps us stuck. It's a little bit like being in a maze and we find one way forward and we go round and round and round, and then eventually we find ourselves back where we started. Most of our lives, most of our business lives involve this frenetic activity, and we often end up where we started. Why do I place such an important emphasis on simplicity? Because in the simplicity, there is an immense amount of clarity. And in that clarity, it's a new pathway opens up. And I see this happening every day of my week with different businesses, large, small, medium. The clarity creates the new pathway. Sometimes this feels magical, but a lot of the time it's incredibly ordinary. It's about coming back to the principle of simplicity. The second principle is the principle of flow. The analogy that I use for all businesses is that a business is like a river. When a river is flowing freely, it's incredibly vibrant, very healthy, huge vitality, and it creates a little ecosystem where everything is interdependent. This is a really important word for me. Most human beings, most businesses oscillate between dependency and independence. Interdependence is where everything is working in harmony, internally and externally with all stakeholders. Going back to the analogy of a river, if a river gets blocked, very quickly it stagnates and it gets smelly. It's the same with a business. If a business gets blocked, and all businesses have areas that are blocked, it begins to stagnate and it begins to get smelly. All of my work is about clearing blocks. That's what I do. That's what Business Alchemy is about. It's clearing what's getting in the way of the natural flow of the business. The third principle is seeing the business as a living, breathing organism. Every business is an entity. And for me, a business has a mind, a heart, a gut, and a soul. We operate in a very mind-dominated culture. The business community is mind-dominated. It reveres analytical, logical, rational thinking. There's nothing wrong with that. But even in the most rational, analytic communities, the scientific community, very often the greatest breakthroughs come when teams of scientists have spent months or years working on their pet project. They hit a brick wall, they're exhausted, they sit back, and there's an Archimedes moment, a moment of intuition, a moment that's non-rational. So what I do when I talk to a business, I often go into a business and ask a team of executives, what is the heartbeat of this business? And curiously, nobody's ever asked that. What is the heart of the business? And encourage executives to think about gut instinct. Every successful businessman or woman has great gut instinct. They might not call it that, but they've relied upon that time and time again. We want to create businesses where gut instinct is valued, there's room for it. And then finally, every business for me has a soul. If we don't like the word soul, I use the word essence. So I look at the essence, the soul of the business, and again create an alignment with that. The fourth principle is the principle of shadow. It's what I call shadow. Shadow is the blocks. It's what gets in the way of your purpose, of your dreams for the business, what gets in the way of your intention, your financial plan, your marketing plan. And the shadow comes in many shapes and forms. The analogy I use is like the iceberg. Most of us are familiar with the iceberg. The bit above the water looks huge. If you actually go and look at an iceberg, it's enormous. But actually it's tiny compared to what's underwater. In any business, just like in any relationship, there's a lot going on under the surface. So my work, most businesses, most executives spend their lives looking at what's going on above the surface, creating financial plans, marketing plans, looking at key clients. I'm looking at what's going on under the surface of this business, what's going on between the chief executive, the chairman, what's going on in the board of directors. Some of the blocks, some of the obvious blocks are conflict, greed, jealousy, envy, all of these things are going on. But there's other fundamental ways in which a business is undermining its own stated intention. The next principle is the principle of intention. For me, there's probably no more important, for me, there's probably no more important thing than intention. Nothing in the universe exists without intention. So this house doesn't exist without intention. This building doesn't exist without intention. Your car doesn't exist without intention. The clothes you're wearing doesn't exist without intention. Apple doesn't exist without intention. Amazon doesn't. Someone had the intention to start it. Both Apple and Amazon, quite early on, they nearly didn't make it. But we have to start with intention. That's what creates a business. That's what creates the future of the business. With intention contains the seed of everything, all the dreams that business wants to fulfill. So we have to create a very clear intention. Once we've created it, we have to give it enough water and enough sunlight to allow it to grow. It's like a seed. You plant a seed under the ground, it knows what it is to become the rose, or to become the acorn knows what it is to become the oak tree. So I work a lot with businesses in setting and clarifying the intention. And whether you have it or not, that's what you create, whatever your intention is. The next principle is alignment. Once you've created intention, you need to align it. You need to align it in yourself, in the board of directors, in the next layer of management, and eventually through the organization itself, and with other stakeholders. And we need to look at how we do that, because once you create an intention, it's amazing how many different parts of the organization can be undermining that. It's no different, we know. Some people create an intention to lose 2 stone in weight, but they never do. Because actually, having created the intention, something else comes in that undermines that. They want to eat the cake. It's the same with a business. The next principle is the principle of synchronicity. Synchronicity is actually a term coined by Carl Jung, and it's to explain seemingly random or acausal events, non-causal events. Synchronicity for me is what happens when you get clarity of intention and alignment. The universe meets you. So we like to think of events as coincidence or random, but they're not. The way the universe works in the West, Sir Isaac Newton's third principle at the heart of the scientific community, for every action there's a reaction. In the East, they call it karma. It doesn't matter what we call it, but the universe works in a predictable way. Once you create the intention and the alignment, synchronicity occurs. The universe meets you. So alchemy is really what happens when you begin to work on these principles. When you come back to simplicity, when you create flow, when you clear what's getting in the way, when you have the right intention, when the intention is in line through all the organization, suddenly an organization flowers. This is alchemy. Sometimes it looks magical. Look at what Apple has done. Look at what Amazon has done. Essentially, business alchemy is about allowing an entity to fulfill its potential. If we got a group of businessmen and women together and we said, on a scale of 0 to 100, what potential, how much of its potential has Apple achieved today in 2017? How much potential has Amazon? It would be really interesting. Is it 50%? Is it 70%? If it's 90%, it might as well pack up and go home. But we don't know. But every business has innate potential. And business alchemy is working with these principles to enable the business to fulfill more of its potential.